Good morning. My name is Patrick. Can you tell me a little bit about what happens at Dover when remains are brought back from Hawaii for DNA analysis and who you are?
Sure. My name is Dr. Timothy McMahon. I'm the Director of DoD DNA Operations for the Armed Forces Medical Examiner System. We are actually part of the Defense Health Agency. We have been supporting the DPAA, or the Defense POW Accounting Agency, with DNA testing since 1991. So when DPAA, who is mandated to recover and repatriate our fallen service members, they will take a sample and send it to our laboratory to do DNA testing. When those samples are arrived here, we will do a complicated set of science extractions, it's called, which is basically how we dissolve the bone to get to the DNA. And then we will purify the DNA. And the easiest way to think about that is like your Brita water filter. When you put the water that has elements that you don't want in there, the filter captures that. I have a special filter that allows me to capture the DNA and get rid of anything I don't want. And then we put it through a series of tests called mitochondrial DNA sequencing or short tandem repeat. And the short tandem repeats are the same ones that your state and local crime labs do. But once we generate that sequence for that unknown sample, it's just a sequence. We don't have anything from the original service member to compare it to. So we use what we call family reference samples. And so any service member who has a maternal relative, so anyone who's related to the missing service member through the mother's side, can be what we call a maternal or mitochondrial DNA reference. Anyone who is related to the missing service member from the father's side or the paternal side becomes a reference for what we call Y short tandem repeats. And then we can use mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters to do what we call nuclear DNA testing. So once we generate a sequence, let's say it's from a Southeast Asia case or Vietnam, we take that unknown sequence and we will search it against all of the family references that we have for Vietnam. And if it hits, we report that result, meaning that the unknown sequence is consistent with the family reference, and we'll report that to the DPAA. They will then look at all of the anthropology and odontology, and they will ask us to run what we call a comparison report. And we will issue a believed to be report, meaning that this sequence is believed to be this individual based on the DNA testing. So for example, last year, we reported over 700 comparison reports to the Defense POW Accounting Agency. 185 of those comparison reports are what we call first-time name comparison reports. So that's the first time that an unknown sequence has hit to a family reference, meaning that it can lead to a new identification. So if you look at it, there were 203 identifications made last year of our missing service members, and over 90% of them DNA played a role in helping with the identification. Now this differs, that's my past accounting section. In DNA operations, we also have a current day operations section, and that supports all of our military members in current theaters of operation and in the military itself. And that supports Colonel Finelli, our director, who's the Armed Forces Medical Examiner. And what came out of the first DNA-supported identification in 1991 was the fact that DNA could be used as an identification method. So in 1992, we set up the Armed Forces Repository of Specimen Samples for the identification of remains. And now we have a little over 7.7 million DNA reference cards for all active duty, reserve, and National Guard service members. And so now we have that direct reference. So if a service member is killed in a current theater of operations, we can pull that direct reference and we don't have to rely on family references to make the identification.
Okay. During a dignified transfer, or someone was to be killed and returned to Dover from Iraq or Afghanistan or in a field of combat, is there any DNA done before they're brought back to the United States?
No, so that falls under the jurisdiction of the Armed Forces Medical Examiner, and they will run their pathological investigations to determine cause and manner of death. But at that time, If they cannot establish identity via fingerprint or dental, then DNA is done. And we call that a stat case, or a short turnaround time. And a DNA sample will be taken from the who we call the decedent or the deceased service member, and we will need to turn a result around in 24 hours.